Welcome back to the series Aramaic in the New Testament. In this episode, part 2, we will be looking at Jesus's prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, Jesus only uses one Aramaic word in this prayer, and it is a very simple word. In Mark 14:36, we read, "And he said, Abba, Father, all things are possible to you. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will." And here the phrase Abba is qualified by the following term, father. And in Greek, we have Abba Hopatir. That is similar to what we see in Romans 8:15 and Galatians 4:6, when Paul uses the same phraseology, Abba, Father. But what can we really say about one word, especially such a simple word? Well, one thing we can talk about is the doubling of the letter B, Abba. That's in Greek, or at least in the Greek versions. The Greek versions yield Abba, whereas many of the Aramaic dialects that we would know would give us Ava or Awa. So there's two possibilities for this. One, the difference merely represents variation in speech style. And two, the difference is meant to imply an intimate, in other words, a childlike term such as dad, as is common that you may hear in preaching. Well, let's look at Abba as a variant. Now, Hebrew and some Aramaic forms will spirantize the letter Beth. Spirantization means the sound B changes to a V or a W. So in Syriac, for instance, we'd say Ava or Awa, Avo or Awo. And there you can hear where the Abba becomes Ava. But grammar, of course, and the way grammar rules play out in terms of writing doesn't always align to the way people speak. Interestingly, of course, other Aramaic forms indicate doubling. We see this in Jewish Aramaic. So in Arabic, the sound B does not spirantize to the sound V. And thus you hear things in Palestinian Arabic. Someone may say Yabba for father. They say Yamma for mother. And that certainly sounds like Abba. So is that a holdover from the past to the region, or is it an influence of Arabic not pronouncing V? Could be one or the other. In either case, we do have a variant version where there is Abba instead of Ava. Is it a child's word? Does it mean something like dad instead of father? So could this use be an attempt to articulate the way in which children refer to their fathers as dad? Maybe, maybe not. Really, that discussion goes back to the Greek, right? In the Greek, Abba Father is rendered as Abba Hopatir in Mark, and it's not something like Abba O Pater, where it's saying, God, Abba O Father, or even Tata. Tata is another way of saying father or dad, dada, dad in Greek, you could say. Now, there's been a longer discussion on this, and I'm not going to bother rehashing it. This has been worked out by McCasland, who's argued that the Greek, even the form hopater ought to be understood in this context as a type of possessive, and thus my father. So for those of you who like Greek, I'll refer you to that article in JBL some time ago, though. I don't know if anyone's retreated the topic since then. But what else can we say about that? I think the bigger issue is it's not an Aramaic problem. It's not even a Semitic problem. It's a matter of Indo-European languages versus Semitic languages. So this idea of a father versus dad distinction, it doesn't really exist in languages like Aramaic or Hebrew. Of course, modern Hebrew does. It uses Abba to mean dad, in contrast to Ha'av, the father, or even just Av, father. Now, the question is that also the case in the past? Maybe. It's tough to say. We do see in the Targums where Ava is used in different Jewish Aramaic readings of the Old Testament. It's just not indicated whether it's doubled or not. The other issue is the term Baba is usually sort of how children refer to dad, or you could say dad or daddy. It's the same sort of thing, right? And it's this onomatopoetic sound, this babbling that children use. I mean, Europeans do this with papa, papa, baba. And so all of it, baba, abba, it all reflects the same idea of dad or father. But in either case, the issue is dad and father mean the same word in the Semitic languages. And so the problem isn't what's in Aramaic. The challenge instead is in languages like Greek or English or German, Spanish, you name it, anything that has a father form, a language form, right? A literary form we could call, even though it probably didn't originate that way, a literary form versus a form that is more colloquial. We could call it intimate or personal. A solution to this, of course, could be found in the Aramaic version of Mark 14:36, which reads, Wemar avo kulmedem meshkahat a'avar men kosohono elosevyon elodilok, which reads something like, and he said, Father, avo, my father, you can do anything. Now, it's interesting here. The contrast is still using this term, Abba, but here it's avo, with the qualifier, my father, the intimate use of it quite specifically. So either way you slice it, it's not just dad, it's dad, my dad, father, my father in the Aramaic. And with that, we can conclude that Abba means something like father and dad. And so it's not a matter of whether this is the use of an intimate or a formal term. It's a matter of it being a Semitic use of the term, which is both intimate and formal. And maybe by that extension, the European interpretation could lead, into that context too. And maybe by extension, reading it in such a way would be useful for people who come from cultures that have different words to distinguish between father and dad. I think the key point here is that the term is being used in Aramaic in every Bible tradition we have, and that probably reflects some sort of liturgical usage or call upon God as Abba, as Father. And in fact, that is the sort of the premise of the Lord's Prayer, Avun Bishmayu, our Father who art in heaven, is to call God Avun, our Father. So there you have it. Abba in the New Testament. It's one word. We could just say it means dad or father, but now we have a little bit more to think about the next time we see this term. As always, I hope you enjoyed this conversation and this exploration into Aramaic words in the New Testament. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and subscribe, share this video, comment, and of course, hit the like button. It always helps to circulate these videos when you do things like that. Much appreciated, and we'll see you soon.